So, all right, sensible heat ratio. This is a really, really critical thing to understand. So, if you're an HVAC contractor, hopefully this will kind of be review. And if you're a policymaker, pay attention. This is really, really important right here. All right, next up. So there is heat and there is humidity. Like I'm sure most people on the East Coast have heard the phrase, it's not the heat, it's humidity. Yep, you're right. So these have different names within the HVAC world, though. The heat is the sensible and the latent is the humidity. And next slide, I define what these are. So all air conditioners do both of these all the time. It just varies how much. Sensible is cooling. So that is taking heat out of the air. So that is actually lowering what the thermostat says. Latent is dehumidification. And technically what it is it's forcing a phase change from vapor to liquid. That's what we're doing. We're taking water vapor out of the air and we are condensing it on the coil like that beer can I showed earlier. And then it drips off the bottom of the coil and it gets drained out of the house.
It takes a fair amount of energy to do this. This phase change takes a fair amount of energy. It's what drove the Industrial Revolution was that energy, steam.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. And so basically, as we drive to higher efficiency levels, fundamentally what we are doing is we are giving up dehumidification and increasing how much sensible cooling we're doing, which we're going to get to. So this ratio
and
can
pretending
vary.
that's saving
That's
energy.
good. Yeah, it's good because I told you it's good. Because it uses less energy. There's times you want to use more energy. My 20 SEER heat pump in West Virginia, my dehumidifier consistently uses more power than my very efficient air conditioner because the air conditioner doesn't dehumidify. That's a problem. And this is where we are headed with a huge swath of this equipment, particularly the lower end stuff, which Reedy, you talked about last week. You have a client that came to you, I want the $2,000 and I want to get it the cheapest way possible. And that is with equipment that sucks at dehumidification. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. All right, next up. So let's talk about the sensible heat ratio. So you're going to do some sensible work and some latent work. The what do you call it? The thing at the bottom that says sensible latent. Ideally, those would be reversed. Old school inefficient air conditioner was like 50-50. You might even get to where you're doing 60 or 65% dehumidification and only a third cooling. Your kind of modern-ish equipment until just recently, so say 10 to 13 SEER, you're typically seeing a 0.75. So you're doing 25% dehumidification, 75% sensible, give or take. Now, keep in mind that only happens after the equipment has run for 5 or 10 minutes. So it's very important to understand. So if it only runs for 7 minutes, guess what happens? You don't get any dehumidification because the coil never got cold enough. This brings us to high efficiency equipment where we can routinely see 0.9 sensible heat ratio, which means they're only doing 10% dehumidification. This is a problem. And what's worse is some of this equipment purposely to get to the high efficiency levels is running a 0.99. So it's doing 1% dehumidification. And say you're at that 0.91, going back a slide, if the system doesn't run for long enough, it never even gets to that. So it never starts dehumidifying at all. And this is what we've been sacrificing in large part as we've been marching the SEER ratings up and up and up. So we're to the point where really going further doesn't make much more sense unless we introduce some other pieces to the puzzle, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah. And if you want to understand why adding a bigger evaporator coil to a smaller condenser increases the efficiency, this is why. There's a certain amount of workload the unit can do, and you're just chopping off a portion of the latent removal and just throwing it out. So now you're just not doing it. And since you're not doing that, using less energy. If you're using less energy, it's more efficient.
Yep.
That's why the guy at the supply house tells you, oh yeah, you're getting a 3-ton. Well, if you'll just go ahead and get a 3.5-ton coil on top of it, we'll bump you on up a few SEER ratings. There's what you're doing.
Right. It's a challenge. It's really a challenge. And as everything right now is pushing us to oversized equipment, size to heating, and to higher efficiencies, which also hurts our dehumidification capability. So this is the technical reason why we are freaked the hell out about all of this stuff. We're about to make a bunch of people sick, and a whole lot of people are going to start thinking that heat pumps suck. When they don't, it's the efficiency standards at the end of the day. So we need to be really, really careful about this.
Yeah, well, efficiency standards, it's the sizing, it's the whether or not it can run on multiple stages.
Yep. All pieces of the puzzle that we'll get to in a moment. All right, next up. So the 0.99 here, this leads to wet houses and sick people with very high levels of certainty. There's a doctor within the environmentally sensitive market that says that about a third of people have the gene that makes them sensitive to mold. So it's kind of like having allergies. I'm allergic to half the freaking outdoors. I've taken a bunch of injections for it. I'm better than I used to be, but I still have challenges. But I know that I am one of the ones that is allergic to mold. And about a third of people are. You're okay until you push people to where they are beyond what they are capable of handling, and then you get into your allergic reactions, and things get really bad really fast. This is not a place we want to push people. And guess what? As an industry, we are pushing people towards environmental sensitivity. This is not scare tactics. This is just freaking math. This is where we're going.